Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Barry Beckham. The subject in what I hope may become a series of videos is presentation. Now I wonder how many photographers do consider the presentation of the images they spend a lot of time and trouble creating. When we stop and think about presentation, it's quite a large subject. If we just set aside for the moment the fact that we may want to consider this subject for print purposes, let's just consider on-screen viewing for a moment. So where are we viewing most of the images that we produce? Well, I think our first choice as enthusiast photographers is going to be our flat screen monitors. I'm viewing this image on a BenQ 27-inch monitor, and it's displaying to me an image which is actually larger than the prints I made back in my darkroom days. Even if I say so myself, the display is pretty impressive. But of course we have large flat screen TVs and we can view the images there. We have mobile devices, and also if you're a member of a camera club, photographic society, you're probably outputting some of your images via a digital projector onto a large screen in a darkened room. If we give some thought to what format or aspect ratio most of these devices are, we're going to find they're 16:9. Practically all of our flat screen monitors are 16:9 aspect ratio. Modern flat screen TVs are. Many of the digital projectors we're using are also the same format. The one difference may be our mobile devices, but the images we create can be displayed there quite easily too. But as we look at this image on the iPad, we're reminded that at times the aspect ratio of the image we're going to use is not going to display perfectly on the device we're showing that image on, be that an iPad, a digital projector, or even a flat screen monitor. Presentation techniques are also pretty important to those who are creating audio-visual via PTE AV Studio or software which is similar. Here, generally speaking, we want our images to match the output device they're being displayed on. And in most cases, that's going to be 16:9 aspect ratio. But the images we get from our cameras are generally 3:2 aspect ratio. Not always, but most of the time. There are techniques that will allow us to crop or to squeeze a 3:2 aspect ratio image into a 16:9 presentation. But sometimes that may not be possible or desired. I think it rather depends on the content of the image and your personal preference. I think this image may be a good example of that. If I select the crop tool for an image like this in Photoshop, I can go to the top of the screen and I can determine to select a 16:9 aspect ratio. But when I do that with an image like this, you can see an obvious problem. I can move the image about, but I can have the tail of the bird in the shot and no head, which is clearly unacceptable. Or I can have most of the head, I get that right to the top, but we still lose some of the tail. So this is the sort of image which defies cropping from 3:2 to 16:9. The only way we can squeeze this image into a 16:9 aspect ratio is to distort the image a little bit. Now sometimes we can get away with that, sometimes we can't. As I said a few moments ago, it really depends on the content and even our own personal view. If I just remove that crop for a moment and I switch to another 3:2 image here and I come back and click, you can see with an image like this, then there's a possibility that we can actually crop a 16:9 from a 3:2 image. And once again, I've got the opportunity to move the image around, and sometimes we actually find that by doing this we actually make the composition just a little bit better. But here we have the option to crop to 16:9, whereas with the bird we don't. So with my bird image back on screen, let's have a look at squeezing this into a 16:9 aspect ratio and make a judgment on whether we feel that's acceptable or not. I'm going to begin by taking a quick look at the resolution of this image. Image size. I'm going to take the width at 5,000 pixels. So if we was making a 16:9 new canvas, we're going to need something like 5,000 pixels on the long side by about 2,800 in height. 2812 to be precise. So what I'm going to do here is go to File, New, and I'm going to create that over on the right hand side here. 5,000 pixels by 2812. Doesn't really matter what color it is, it's black at the moment, we'll just create that. All we're interested in is the actual shape here. If I go to the bird image and drag out the tab, using the move tool I can click drag and drop. I'll tuck that one back up there, but select the 16:9 version. So here we're effectively seeing the bird as we saw it a little while ago with the crop lines around it. So what I've got to do now is I've got to compress this image and make an assessment, I suppose, on whether I think that's going to be acceptable to the eye or not. To do that, we need to go to the top left of the screen to our edit menu and choose free transform. Ctrl+T is the shortcut key. We get a bounding box around the outer edge. To distort the image, we have to hold the shift key as we drag on these toggles. So if we go to the center top, hold the shift, we can drag the bird down. I won't go the full distance, I'll go to a distance which I feel is appropriate. Then down to the center bottom and do the same just to bring the tail of the bird into the shot. Now if I were to hit the enter key or the tick on the options at the top of the screen, Ctrl+0 will fit the image on screen, we could make an evaluation on whether we felt that slight distortion was something acceptable or not. And you can see what I mean about it being largely a personal choice. If I had a presentation I wanted to make and it was important that I output to a 16:9 presentation, I think I'd be quite happy to use this bird in that shot. We could just save this as a JPEG into whatever project folder we're working from. We don't even have to flatten the image over here on the right hand side, although we can if we want. If we go to the top right of the layers, we could choose to flatten this image and then save that as a JPEG. Now, just for the moment, I'm going to touch Ctrl+Z to undo that flatten command, because if I was working on a project and I had other images that I might want to use this technique to move from a 3:2 aspect ratio image to a 16:9, then I may want to use this shape again. One of the things you would have noticed here though was my intention was to retain the full resolution of this image. If I'm putting together a slideshow these days, or even if I'm putting together a video for YouTube, I tend to use my images at full resolution, knowing that the deciding factor is going to be the video that I finally output, which is going to be 1920, 1080 pixels in most cases. Now with the spinning round of the screen, I've just deleted what we created and I'm back to my high resolution 3:2 aspect ratio image of the bird. If I was making a slideshow, maybe using PTE AV Studio, I may want to reduce the resolution of the images. It all depends. If you do want to do that, then what you can do is something similar, but you will notice just one or two differences. For example, if I go back up to my File New command, top left, what we can do here is we can define the actual resolution of the slideshow we're making. It could be 1920 1080. But it could also be a slightly larger size than that, and a lot of people these days are settling on 2560 by 1440, which retains 16:9, but it's just marginally larger than the size we've been making over the last couple of years. Doesn't stop us from outputting our slideshow to HD size of 1920 1080, but it gives us a little bit of room for animation if we want to do that sort of thing. So let's create that and do the same as what we did before. I dragged out the tab, and with the move tool I click, dragged and dropped. The difference we're going to see here, of course, is we've got now a much larger image that we need to squeeze into a lower resolution background. But no problem, we just do exactly the same as what we did before. I'll use the shortcuts this time, Control T to bring up free transform. And what I can do here is, sometimes when we're doing this, as you can see here, the bounding box goes off the screen. If that happens, if you hit Control 0, the image will be fitted on screen with the bounding box, and that can be quite useful. So to start with, I'm just going to pick up one of the corner toggles and get the image more or less right. Then I can touch Control 0 again, and now I can just adjust the image in the similar way as we did before. And what I could do here is hold the Shift and drag out the sides, click and click. Just make sure the bottom is correct as well. So there, when I hit the tick on the options bar there, I've got exactly the same as what we created a few moments ago, but I've got a lower resolution image to move forward with. Now, anytime that we're working on a project and we've got 3:2 aspect ratio images which we don't feel are going to take very well to a crop, and certainly if they're not going to crop very well, they're not likely to be able to be squeezed into the shape as I've just demonstrated. Well, in that case, we can use all sorts of creative ways to get those 3:2 aspect ratios into a 16:9 aspect ratio presentation. But those beautiful full screen fades from one image to another are not going to be possible. We're going to need to choose another presentation method. I'll see you next time.